If you hate this timeline, I think you need every second of this video. Feel free to speed it up. Okay, so to understand where we're at in this country, you have to go back to philosophical debates that actually predate the United States, but that contributed some of the exact wording to our Declaration of Independence and Constitution. This is about Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. These two political philosophers lived across the 16 and 1700s in Europe, and they witnessed a lot of violence and misery across Europe, and as a result, they emerged as two of the most critical political scientists in terms of their contributions to the American form of government. To put it simply, Hobbes believed humans were wild animals prone to violence and exploitation. And because of this, he believed that humans needed a single, strong, authoritarian leader who could keep us in line with an iron fist. Locke had a much more modern view. He believed that we deserved freedom, because he believed in our core we wanted to work together, build communities, and thrive. It should sound pretty familiar. It was Locke's path that our founders loved for us. And I think most people today would still agree with Locke. It's an indisputable fact that the United States has leveraged personal freedom to generate wealth at a scale and a speed that we've never seen before. But then you ask, how did we get to where we are today? And this is a critical point. Without additional support, Locke's system only holds up at a small scale. He was born in 1632. His philosophy had never been tested in the wild before, so there's no way he could have possibly known what would happen after a 250-year-long experiment with it. Which brings us to today, and you may have gotten there on your own, but this is about late-stage capitalism. When people are in small communities, we thrive because we are accountable to each other because we know each other. This is why you'll find in small towns, people with wildly different political views still get along. But when communities and economies become so large that we lose touch with each other, we lose that sense of shared accountability and we start to drift toward the Hobbes vision of humans. Self-interested wild animals who have to be controlled with an iron fist. Is this language starting to sound familiar? Monarchs, dictators, and oligarchs, they desperately want the Hobbes world to be true, because that is the world that entrusts them with consolidated wealth and power. And as the communities within these large societies become more isolated and disconnected, like we see with the MAGA world and the rest of us, each group becomes more irrational, wild animals who need to be ruled. And at that point, all you need is a sociopath who sees an opportunity for power. Which brings us to the oligarchy. Do you know what Trump, Musk, and Zuckerberg all have in common? They have all switched back and forth between Republican and Democratic parties because they don't care about policy. They care about whichever party provides them with the shortest path to wealth and power. In that sense, you can see that through Locke's system of government, we created a country that is the victim of its own success. An environment that generated so much wealth for free people, they became monsters and now want to pull up the ladder and rebuild society in Hobbes's vision, which I think we can all still agree is not the best for us, which brings me to my point in all of this. Philosophy and political science, they can be frustrating, but we've been talking about this for 500 years, so now we just need to keep taking the next step. So a modern take on Locke versus Hobbes looks like this. Locke is absolutely correct that our starting point should be personal freedom, because as we've seen, personal freedom does lead to growth and prosperity. It is actually in our best interest to work together as communities, biologically, socially, and economically. But now we've learned through observation that at some point in amassing wealth and power, humans become corrupted, and we have to rely on systems of government to protect us from them or to prevent it from happening entirely. Because people are not born good or bad, we are all corruptible under the right circumstances. And the best economic conditions create so much wealth and so much power so quickly that humans can become corrupted more quickly. Now we have over 800 billionaires in the United States alone who are all prone to corruption. To best understand how to manage through this, we just have to look at the Roosevelts. Teddy Roosevelt led us through the rebuild after the Gilded Age, and FDR led us through the rebuild after the Great Depression. They understood that transition point that I mentioned earlier, where wealth and power become toxic to the society Locke envisioned. And just like Hobbes and Locke, the Roosevelts had personally witnessed misery and knew what caused it. Teddy Roosevelt cleaned up the mess, and FDR is the one who put in the systems to ensure it would never happen again. In order to do that, FDR pushed the top tax rates to over 90%. This created an environment where it was almost impossible to earn so much wealth that you saw yourself become the villain. Then he redesigned government to repurpose that wealth back into society, building social safety nets that took care of the people who were working to generate that wealth, but who didn't capture enough of it through their wages. It's worth noting that I don't think that there is another Great Depression coming because all of those systems are still in place. But that doesn't mean we can't do better if we recommit to the same philosophy. FDR-style economic policies are why Canada has paid leave for new parents and universal health care with a GDP per capita equal to Mississippi. We can have that too, because we create that much wealth. Which brings me to my last point. Capitalism itself is not the enemy, because an economic system is only as good as the people driving it and regulating it. Like we see across the rest of the developed world, capitalism can be a great system of economic growth so long as that system is calibrated to the benefit of the people fueling it. But that obviously won't happen under Trump. A billionaire president with a bunch of billionaire best friends is the most powerful person in the world. He's made it clear he wants to use that power to control the economy, control our population, control our bodies, and control the future of government. But the good news I'll leave you with is that we have an incredible ability to slow and even stop some of the changes he's pushing for, because we still have free speech, we still have donations, and we still have our vote. So let's get it done, let's do it together, and I will be with you every step of the way, starting right now.